Welcome to AminAcademy.com. In History of Muslim World, let us discuss about history of rightly guided caliphs Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr in 573 to 634 was the first Muslim caliph and a close friend and companion of the Prophet Muhammad. Early life. Abu Bakr was born in Mecca, Arabia to Uthman and Salma. He was a wealthy businessman who avoided vice's command in pre-Islamic Arabian society. He was also one of the first Muslims and was persuaded others to convert to Islam. Role in the Prophet's life. Abu Bakr was a companion of the Prophet in his journey to Medina in 622, where he served and his chief advisor. He was also the father-in-law of the Prophet, and his daughter Aisha became one of the Prophet's wives. Caliphate. After Prophet's death in 632, Abu Bakr became the first caliph, taking on the Prophet's political and administrative functions. The title caliph means successor or deputy. Contributions. During his rule, Abu Bakr brought Central Arabia under Muslim control, suppressed tribal upsprings, and expanded Muslims' rule into Iraq and Syria. He also paved the ways of first Muslim liberation of Islamic Jerusalem, which occurred a few years after his death. Abu Bakr died on August 23, 634 and was buried in Aisha's apartment. Now, let us discuss some detail about Abu Bakr's life. The news of Prophet Muhammad's death caused panic and widespread consternation in the whole land of Arabia. At the time of his death, the Prophet had given no instructions about the appointment of his successor. Accordingly, dissension broke out and at once over the questions of leadership. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali were the four chief disciples of the prophets, and each one of them was fit for leadership. In fact, all of them became caliphs in turn. Deep knowledge in the Sharia, the law and tradition of Islam, power of judicious decision, and stainless character. These were the qualities, the possession of which decided the election of the caliph. The great-hearted Abu Bakr was the wisest and most energetic of Muhammad's disciples and was deeply devoted to the Prophet. He had been the Prophet's constant companion and had submitted ungrudgingly to the oppression of the enemy. The Prophet's favorite wife, the Lady Aisha, was his daughter. On his deathbed, the Prophet had often selected him to lead the congregation at public prayers and deputize for him in the performance of religious and social affairs. Umar was admired and praised by everybody for his largeness of heart, his heroic valor, and his skill in military leadership. He was unsurpassed in his zeal for the maintenance of the power and supremacy of Islam. Uthman was a devoted disciple and son-in-law of the Prophet twice. He had given ungrudgingly all his vast treasures for the spread of advancement of Islam. Ali was the first cousin of the Prophet and had married the Prophet's beloved daughter Fatima. He also possessed excellent qualities and was the living embodiment of religion and piety. Islam had profited largely by his valor and military skill. The chief men of Medina assembled to decide as to which one of the above four should be entrusted with the responsibility of the caliphate. It was first proposed that the leadership of Islam should be determined by election and not by the claims of hereditary descent. Finding there was acute controversy over this question, caliphate and even for the inmates, in prayer and worship, that one must be a descendant of Ali and Fatima, besides possessing deep knowledge in Shariat and Marifat. The regard they regard Ali as entitled to the highest honors for the following reasons. They say Ali was the first to embrace Islam. He was the nearest agnatic relation of the Prophet. He was the Prophet's son in law. The Prophet himself, in their opinion, had designated Ali as his next successor. Umar advanced and declared Abu Bakr as the Prophet's successor on the ground that he had been the Prophet's dearest and most faithful disciple. Most of the assembly having followed this example, Abu Bakr was unanimously chosen as the leader of Islam. He refused to accept any royal title for himself and contented himself with the style and appellation of caliph, meaning deputy or regent. After the election, he addressed the whole assembly and said, I am not the best or greatest of among you. I shall depend in every matter upon your counsel and assistance. Support me if I act well and correct me if I make mistakes. To tell the truth to a person commissioned to rule in a mark of loyalty. To suppress truth is treason. The strong and the weak both are equal in my eyes, and both will receive justice at my hands. You will honor me as so long as I honor God and his messenger, and I shall be entitled to receive your allegiance if I observe the laws and rules of the prophet. Immediately before his death, the honored prophet had given direction that a military expedition should be sent against Syria for the murder of Muslim ambassador. In order to fulfill his desires, Abu Bakr sent an army against that country. At this time, Heraclius, emperor of Constantinople, was the master of Syria. This large, prosperous, and fertile tract of land was well adorned with a series of strongly fortified towns. The food supply of Arabia was derived from this land. It was famous for plenty and abundance. When the Caliph ordered all Muslims to join in this expedition, people flocked in crowds from desert parts of Arabia. The array of soldiers having made ready to start, the Caliph gave them the following instruction: never transgress the law of right dealings. Never mutilate corpses under the feeling of revenge. Never destroy the dead palm or provisions for man or beast, and never oppress any shaveling monk of the Christian faith if he pleads submission. Advance in the name of God, and he will protect you from fear of the sword and pestilence. The General Osama received Syria at the head of his troops and returned victorious BC 632. Many had cast an eye of greed upon the fertile region between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. The northern portion of this land was known as Mesopotamia, while the southern or lower portion, including Babylon and Chaldea, was known by the name of Iraqi Arab. The region east of the Tigris was known as Iraqi Azam. Iraq, Mesopotamia, modern Persia, Bactria, and small principalities of Central Asia, the territories on the western frontier of India were all at this time under the domination of the Persian Emperor. The separate army was sent for the conquest of Iraq under the leadership of the great general Khalid bin Walid. First conquered the kingdom of Hira and levied an annual tribute of 70,000 gold coins upon the country. This was the first time when the Arabs levied tribute upon a foreign land. The Persian soldiers tried their best to offer resistance to the Muslims, but they failed in their attempts. Fort after fort, city after city fell under the control of Khalid. The booty captured in war was sent to Medina on the back of camels. Meanwhile, the conquest of Syria not having been successfully achieved, the Caliph appointed a Khalid as the chief generalissimo for the region also and gave orders to proceed there soon. Accordingly, Khalid entrusted in the work of conquering Arabia to others and himself proceeded with irresistible force against Syria. In AD 634, he stormed the strongly fortified town of Basra. The citizens submitted after a great struggle, and from Basra, Khalid proceeded to the conquest of Damascus. The Roman soldiers fought with extreme valor and heroism but were unsuccessful in spite of all their efforts. In the end of Damascus too fell into the hands of the Arab. It was occupied on the 12th day of Jamadil II in the 13th year of the Hijrah era. After reigning for 2 years and a half, Abu Bakr died on the 23rd of August 634 AD. His corpse was buried immediately beside the tomb of Prophet. Abu Bakr had been younger by 3 years than the Prophet. He was once a rich and successful merchant of Mecca. Many are of opinion that he was the first disciple of the Prophet. He was extremely pious and accomplished with many virtues. His attachment to the Prophet was deep and unshaken. He had never the least doubt about the Prophet's being a messenger from heaven. Whatever the Prophet might say, he accepted it at once as gospel truth. For the sake of Islam, there was no sacrifice which he was not prepared to undergo. Out of his boundless wealth, he took only a small portion with him when leaving for Medina. In the midst of the most fearful danger, he had ever supported the cause of the Prophet, and in spite of tyranny and persecution, he had never left the side of the Prophet's while others migrated to Abyssinia. Though not a great military leader himself, he was the Prophet's companion in most of his battles and in every detail of his life and conduct, he followed the examples of the Prophet in deed and speech. He was only friend indeed to the Prophet Muhammad. Before embracing Islam, he had exercised considerably influence among the Quraysh, and by virtue of his intelligence, he had become an object of honor to the people of Mecca. Like the blessed Prophet, he too was satisfied with the most simple habiliments. He discharged the duties of administration with the utmost skill and efficiency, and the good of public was the only object of his endeavors. So far, we discussed about the first caliph of Islam, Abu Bakr. We have done. Please subscribe our YouTube channel.